My name's Linda Smith, and I'm the coordinator for Region. My husband and I are the coordinators for Region 2, and we're glad to have you at our meeting this afternoon. We're going to be discussing how to weave the theme into the year, and our theme for this year is Go Light Your World. So we're going to talk about different ways that we can get the kids excited about going and lighting their world. But if you don't mind just bowing your heads for a word of prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you for the opportunity we have to be here today on this beautiful Sabbath day. Please be with us as we're talking about your children and what we can do to help them see the importance of lighting their world. Please send your Holy Spirit to fill this room, and please give me the words to say that these directors need to hear. Thank you, Jesus, for all you do for us. We love you. Amen. All right. So like I said, this year the theme is Go Light Your World. And my example here, this was for one of the themes we did when we were Adventure Club directors. So this is not the right theme. This is several years ago. But this is just here to kind of give you an idea of what a backdrop looks like, you know, one of the many kinds that you can make. But when you make yours, you want your theme to be Go Light Your World. So basically, I guess the first thing we can talk about is some different ideas for implementing the theme, you know, ways to display it to the kids. And what we did one year, we used cardboard, and it was pretty good size. It was probably about as long as this table, but you know, kind of went out a little bit like this, and so it was sturdy. And then we painted it yellow, painted it orange, and just put different things on about the kids' walk with Jesus. This was a really neat little song, and my daughter played her guitar and taught the song to the kids. And so that's how we displayed our board. But there's so many things you can do. You can do cardboard, but you always want to keep in mind how much storage do you have. You know, everybody's facilities are different. We had a closet that we could put this in. That's why we made it so it could fold up. But keep in mind how much storage space you have when you're designing your background. If you know it's something that you're going to use year after year after year, cardboard won't be your way to go, because after a year with the cardboard, we threw it in the dumpster because, you know, it only lasts and stays sturdy for so long. But if you know you have storage space, you might want to think about investing in some wood and just get some door hinges. And, you know, you can make it tall, you can make it short, but, you know, just whatever you need, because remember, the little people are going to be sitting around the floor looking at it, so it's going to look big to them. But if you make it out of wood, the advantage would be that you could paint it white, and then you could use paper over it, different colors of paper, depending on what year your theme, you know, how you want to change it out. But wood, you would be able to use year after year, and then if you put the hinges on, you could just fold it up and then store it in a closet, and then every year give it a new facelift. Another idea you could do is, if you really don't want to do either of those, you could use foam board. And you can always, depending on your facility, whether they'll allow you to or not, you could take these command strips. You can buy them in all different sizes and that hold up all different weight. And they're great because one side goes on the wall and the other side sticks to your poster board, and then it Velcros together like this. So if you're sharing a facility with, say, Pathfinders or Sabbath School, and you can't leave your posters up all the time, you just pull this off. This stays on the wall, and then this stays on the back of your poster. Then the next week, to put it up, just re-hook it together, and your poster will stay. So these are the greatest invention. I hang all my pictures at home with these now. I don't make any more holes in the walls. Then you can take them down and reposition them, and they're great. But another thing you can do is you could do Motable foam boards. And this is foam board like this. You could do Motable foam boards, and you could hook them, you know, put them side by side and do different colors. You know, you could also just do regular poster board. And you could do, you know, maybe you only want one poster board up. You know, you do, say you do 4 poster boards, but you get tired of one of them, it's made its point, so you could take it down, put a new one up. You keep the kids' interest that way. Oh, you might want to pick up a flyer on that chair. Oh no, right there, one of the handouts. So you can switch out the poster boards, you know, if you have it on a wall. Another idea is you can hook these. You can hook things on your backdrop too with the Velcro and the command strips, and you can switch things out from there as well. But it does keep the kids' attention when they have something to look at, and it is nice to kind of change it out a little as you go along, depending on what you're going to do. So once you decide what kind of backdrop you want, whether it be cardboard, wood, poster board, foam board, you know, that's part of the battle one right there. And then it's, well, what am I going to put on my board to implement the idea of the year? For Go Light Your World, there's quite a bit you can do about Go Lighting Your World. You could have different pictures in one section on your board about kids handing out Bible study guides, or taking a food basket to a needy family. When Christmas time comes, you could switch out one of your posters and make one about Christmas shoe boxes and get them excited about bringing Christmas shoe boxes in. You could make one of your sections about helping elderly people or early Adventist pioneers. You could do Bible characters who brought light to the world. There's a lot of them. We're going to talk about some of them as we go along, but different Bible characters that brought light to the world. Also nature topics. There's so many good nature topics out there that talk about light, that you can tie that topic right to Jesus and about being the light. You can talk about the sun, the moon, the stars. You can talk about fireflies, rainbows, campfires, lanterns. You can use candles. You can use so much to decorate. I have these right here. Of course, it's daytime now, but they're solar lanterns. And but you could have some of these. You can get these on sale really cheap right now because summer's, you know, pretty much over. And you can hang these on different things or put them in different places. And, you know, and you could go to the dollar store. These are 2 for $1 for candles like this. You know, you can use them for different ideas, you know, for lighting the world or just lighting your room and just put them around. You could even build a little shelf thing out of cardboard or something out of wood, and you could buy a bunch of these and stick them around, you know, to give light on your board, just candles. And you could make little hooks on your poster board where you could hang these, you know, where it's lighting the world with a light. So anyhow, there's just a lot you can do, but the biggest thing is first think about how much room do I have? How much money do I have that I want to spend on this? And if this is something I'm going to do every year, maybe make it a better permanent structure like real wood, but that, of course, is if you have a place to store it. So then once you get that, you decide, okay, this is the way I'm going to display my stuff. And these are some topics that I'm thinking about adding to my board and switching out so the kids don't get bored. Then think about your worship topic that you're going to go along with, because remember, it's going to be Go Light Your World, and you're going to be standing in front of that. You're going to be doing song service and all your worship. So think of what your worship topics could be that will go along with the theme. One of a really good one is mission stories. There's so many mission stories about people going around the world and lighting the world for Jesus and making many sacrifices. And another idea that goes along with that, you could read just individual stories that, you know, really character building stories about missionaries for the kids. Or you could find a really exciting book and you could read them a chapter a week out of that book and stop at a point where it's really exciting. So they're like, oh no, don't stop, finish it. Oh, you can't stop. Well, you have to come back next week to hear how it continues on. They like that. Somebody did that in my son's Sabbath school, and the kids liked it because they could hardly wait to get back the next week to hear what happened, you know. So that's another idea when it comes to mission stories, but there's a wide variety of mission stories out there that you could get to really, you know, and you could have a section on your backdrop, you know, start your year out. Okay, I'm going to start with mission stories. So have a section designed for that where you're putting things that draw their attention to the lesson that you're teaching them. And then just good character building stories. I don't know, probably most of you have heard of Miss Brenda and her new bedtime stories. It says right on them that they're based on true character building stories. And my son loves these. I don't know how many times he's read them, but there's 5 volumes and they are full of true stories And it's true, they're all very character building. So you could, find some that fit the theme you're going to have for that week, and then have another part on your board somewhere where you're going to post stuff about character building stories that will bring the kids' attention to that and make them think about it, not just once, but hopefully, keep thinking about it. There's lots of character builder stories out there. And another one that I thought about was Early Adventist Pioneer. And I thought, wow, our kids really need to know about our foundation of our church and the early Adventist pioneers, because a lot of them were very young when they went around lighting the world for Jesus. And look at what's grown out of it. So I bought these books for my daughter. She's 18 now, but when she was little, and she loved them. These are stories about some of the early Adventist pioneers, but they're fun stories. Like this one's about a cow, and there's just character building things in each of these stories. This is about Ellen White and her cow when she was a little girl. And then if you flip it over, there's one about Tig's Tales. And this is a story when she was older and lived in Australia, and how she even let her light shine to a man who was a thief and was stealing pies and stuff from their house, and how it changed the man's life. And it's a really good story too. And then there's one about Ellen's miracle horse, and how the Lord takes such good care of us in all circumstances, and about the miracle about this horse, and about the praying, how they prayed, and it's just an amazing story, and the kids would like that. Then you flip it over, and you have Mr. Squirrel's Treasures, and it's a really good story about just good character building story about not to accuse people of taking things, because maybe it's not the person taking it, maybe it was a squirrel, and how we should be careful about not jumping to conclusions. And just stories, and as you're telling them these stories, you could the stories are pretty easy to memorize. I mean, not word for word, but you can even show them the pictures, and then you could even make a picture of this, take a copy of this, and hang it on your board to help them remember, oh yeah, I'm not going to jump to conclusions, and I'm not going to accuse people of doing things because maybe it was a squirrel. Maybe it wasn't my friend that got all the stuff out of my basket. Another thing you can do is you can go to, and you can write this down if you want, it's not on my handout, but Adventist Heritage, they have these pioneer trading cards. And I picked these up. I bought these at the Children's Ministry Convention it was in February. And I don't know how many of you do the Early Adventist Pioneer, the little award that they have for the kids. It's a really good one for the adventurers. And these are some of the same people that they learn about in that award. But William Miller, and then it has a fact. You could show his picture one day and tell some stories about him. You can Google stories. You can find all kinds of stories about like William Miller, and then just all the different Adventist pioneers. And each week, as you talk to them about it and tell them a little story, you can have another section where you stick their pictures up there. And then every week you can review it, and you can remind them that these people lit the world for Jesus by being faithful and studying and letting the Holy Spirit guide them as they studied their Bibles. And anyhow, they also have bigger cards. I mean, they have cards with these pictures on that are this big too. But I just bought the little ones because that's really all I needed for at home. But that's another thing you can do. But keep in mind that Pioneer Award for the kids is a really, really nice one. And it does encourage them to learn about our church and just all the things, makes them really see what a big church they worship in and how it all came about. Another worship topic idea is Bible stories. There's so many Bible stories that you could think of to do for character building. And what you can do when you're thinking about those Bible stories, remember to tie in maybe a story, like if you're talking about Noah, and how faithful he was to God. Even though people laughed at him and made fun of him and teased him, he still let his light shine for Jesus. He never gave up, even though he was bullied by many people for many years when he was building the ark. But yet he never gave up his, what Jesus had said. Maybe you could tie that in with a character building story about how kids get bullied in school, or, and how life can be hard, but no matter what, stay faithful to Jesus, because when he tells you something, he makes a promise, just like with Noah, he kept it. So you can have a section on your backdrop or one of your poster boards or whatever you decide about different character building Bible stories as well. And make sure that when you're doing Bible stories and stuff, make sure you keep the kids engaged. Like, for instance, for the theme for Adventure Family Fun Weekend, it's Go Light Your World, and then there's always the wagon theme. Well, there's going to be a vote at the Directors Council about which of the two topics they're going to, you're going to get to select from two different topics. And I guess whichever one gets the biggest vote will be the one that the wagons are done, because there's so many Bible characters that lit the world. They kind of have to narrow the wagons down to one so that it's easier to judge them. So, but anyhow, for when you're doing the Bible stories, try to think of kind of fun things that you could do. When you talk about the little boy that shared his lunch, well, you can really bring the kids into the story. The more you bring the kids into the story, the more they're going to enjoy the story. So, like, for instance, I'm going to let you guys be my adventurers, okay? See, there was certain things in the little boy's lunch, and if you want them to really remember those numbers, let them hands-on and they'll remember. So reach in there and pick something out. There's no snakes or anything in there. Just pull one out. Okay, she pulled out a barley loaf. Okay. You want to pick something out? She pulled out a barley loaf. She pulled out a barley loaf. She pulled out a fish.
A shark.
Yeah, well. Oh, she pulled out another fish. And she pulled out a barley loaf. You can pick them all up. So, how many barley loaves do we have all together that was in the little boy's lunch? Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 barley loaves. And how many fish? 2 small fish. So the little boy's lunch had decided to share his lunch and let his light shine for Jesus. He had 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. Now, the kids will probably, if you do that for, they're all going to want to turn. So maybe if you did that for a couple weeks, they're going to never forget that there was 5 barley loaves and 2 fish in that lunch. And at the same time, you're setting a thing of what a nice little character that little boy had, that he was willing to share his lunch with so many people, and he was willing to let his light shine like that. Now, if you want to make barley loaves, I'll tell you what you do. You just go online. You don't even have to cook these. You just go online and you Google barley loaves and you print them out. And then I would print like one for the front and one for the back, but I left mine open so you could see. Then I just took some tissue paper and wadded a little bit of tissue paper up. And then I would take another one, put it over that, so no matter which side they pull out, they're going to see barley loaf. And then you could, if you have a laminator at your church, I don't know how it would go through because it's kind of thick, because you don't just want it flat or they'll be, well, I can't really pick anything up. So that's why I put the tissue paper in. But if you laminate it just with that stuff you buy, the roll of laminating, and then just trim it, then you got your barley loaves. And it's very inexpensive way. And then you could do the same with fish, but I just grabbed a couple of fish that my son had when he was little. But if I was going to do it, at Adventure Club, I'd probably make it look like a fish, like a real fish, not one of those, but just to make my point to you guys. So that's a way that you can bring the kids into the story. And, the more you bring the kids into the story, the more they're going to remember it. So, and then there's so many nature stories out there, but I wanted to share a resource with you, and you might want to write this down. Louis, it's Louis, L-O-U-I-E is his first name, and his last name is G-I-G-L-I-O. And if you Google him, he's got some amazing things about stars that you can show the kids. It's really, for younger ones, it might not keep their attention as long, but for the helping hands and the builders, they would enjoy it. He makes comparisons about golf balls with the size of the world that really gets into a kid where they think, wow, what an amazing God we serve. So, you could use a resource like that to kind of break up your let them watch that instead of you being the one talking all the time? Yes.
What is that name? How do you spell
Oh, his name is Louie, and his last name is Gil. I'm sorry, Giglio. Giglio. So anyhow, and that you could do that for stars, but nature stories, there's so many. If you had a nature corner, I don't know how that came up. Oh, because my screensaver comes up. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Anyhow, there's, a lot of stories about stars, moons, suns, rainbows, fireflies, a lot of things that have to do with light. And you could have a section on your board that had to do with all the nature and all the wonders of God's creation that have to do with lighting up his world too. So, and then your next thing you'll think about is, okay, I know what I'm gonna display it on. I've got some ideas of topics, but now I need some decorations because I really want to capture the kids' attention, because the more bright things you use and the more interesting things you have, the more they're going to watch. Because, a 4-year-old, you probably got 5 minutes of attention span, maybe. And as they get a little older, so anything you can do to help keep their attention span. Like I said, lanterns, also strings of lights. You can buy these for pretty cheap. I got these at Target. I bought them for my camper. But anyhow, you can hang stuff like this up. They have this in every shape, color. They have them in clear, anything. And you could string some of those up somehow on your whatever you decide to build. Flashlights, $1 a piece at the dollar store. And the batteries that go along with them are really cheap too. I don't think they last as long as, good batteries, but you're not going to be using them every minute. You're just going to use them for, a little bit during worship time. Campfire, a really neat thing that I was thinking, and I would have made one except I ran out of time, but you could build a little campfire to go along with the light theme, and you could put wood, just bring some pieces of wood, and then go get one of those little fans and stick it up under the wood. They're battery operated, so you won't have a cord there for kids to trip on. And then get some, you could get plastic and cut it, and you can get some, tissue paper and stick it in there, and then turn the fan on, and then it will kind of blow the tissue paper and blow the plastic, and it will make it look like a real flame. And then, when the kids sit around your board with their little campfire, that would just kind of give them another little decoration. They'd probably enjoy that. And then, once again, like I said, the candles at the dollar store that you can get and put those around. But the kids, I think one thing, when the kids get to interact, it really helps them remember the theme, and it helps them remember the stories. Have any of you ever been to Oshkosh? Well, when you go to Oshkosh, the program they have at night, it's a play, and it's very professionally done. And it was a story of Daniel, this past one. The year before, 5 years before that, it was Esther. And sitting there and watching those, it really makes you realize what these people went through, and it really sticks in your mind. It actually gives you a whole new perspective of the story that you've really not quite ever thought of before. And so as I thought about that, and when I was preparing this, I thought it's kind of the same way with our worships that we do for the kids. If we make them interactive, if we make them interesting, they're going to remember them. So I thought that maybe today you guys would enjoy doing a little you guys want to be adventurers for about 5 minutes. We're going to do a little story. Do you want to do one? Do it? Do it? You want to do one? It's no big deal. You just sit in your chair. Okay. What we're going to do, I'm going to turn the light down on that and get my flashlight so I can read this. What we're going to do is we want to keep the kids' attention when we're talking to them or telling them a story. So one of the ways we can do, they love flashlights, they love interaction. So go to the dollar store, get some flashlights, and if you don't have enough for everybody, then, then just let them take turns, different stories, different weeks. But give them a word to listen to for. Like your word today is going to be Amy. every time you hear me read the word Amy, you're gonna turn your light on. And then every time you hear me say the word girls, you can turn your light off. But we're going to make it easy today. We're not going to do both. We're just going to say, when you hear me say the word Amy, turn your lights on. And that's probably for 4 and 5-year-olds. They probably don't need one on and one off because they'll probably never keep up with all that. So, but if you're doing it with, say, the 3rd and 4th graders, then they could easily keep up with that. But just, keep that in mind. So that's going to make them listen. It's probably going to make you guys even listen because you don't want to be the only one not turning on your flashlight. So, and this also is a character building story about some girls who really shine their light for Jesus and really let their light shine for Jesus. Okay, so when I say the word Amy or Amy's or anything that has to do with Amy, turn your light on, just shine it up for a minute and then turn it back off. Okay. Whoops. She stinks. That's what all the kids in Lindsay's 4th grade class said about Amy. It was obvious that she didn't shower often, that she never wore deodorant and she seldom washed her clothes, and that she rarely shampooed her long, oily, tangled hair. But it really wasn't her fault. She lived with her grandma who had never taught her about personal hygiene. Lindsay told me Amy's self-esteem was pretty low, so she was quiet and just stayed to herself. To make matters worse, all the other girls in the class talked behind her back, and the boys, well, they bullied her by making her their main target during dodgeball. But Lindsay and her 3 girlfriends who had formed a best friends club decided to reach out to Amy. They decided to let their light shine to her. They started by sticking up for her when the other girls were mean to her. And when the girls said mean things about her, they stuck up for her then too. And they started going out of their way to be nice and to talk to Amy. But the best thing they did was to plan a special girls' night sleepover just so they could invite Amy. She acted totally shocked when the popular girls invited her over, and she couldn't wait to go. When Amy arrived, the girls gave her a gift basket. They'd gone shopping and filled it with things a girl would want, like perfume body wash and mist, some new tops, shampoo, lip gloss, razors, and even laundry soap. It was like Christmas to Amy. That night, the girls talked to her like big sisters would about personal hygiene and gave her a squeaky clean makeover. Then when Amy looked in the mirror, her mouth dropped open. So did her classmate's mouth when she walked into school the next morning. Instead of slouching in, Amy walked in with a bounce. Even the teacher noticed. He pulled the girls aside and said, "Good job, girls." Lindsay and her friends treated Amy the way Jesus would treat Amy. Every person with low self-esteem who met Jesus was changed after he looked into their eyes and spoke to them and reached out and touched them. That's something we can all do. Is there an Amy at your school? Whether they're a girl or a boy, you can give their self-worth a makeover. You obviously wouldn't give a boy a basket full of beauty supplies, but you can help him improve in some sports or be a study partner. You can be like Jesus. You can let your light shine by being simply kind to a friend. So that's one way to interact. And can you pick all those flashlights up? That's one way to interact the theme. And if anybody wants a copy of the story, you can take them with your phone, just take a picture of it, and then you're welcome to have that. But just, it doesn't just have to be the Amy story. It can be a Bible story, anything you're talking to them about in worship, any story, give them a clue word. Boy, it's like in church when they're trying to listen to see who gets the most marks, for hearing the word the pastor says. They're going to listen to you. They're going to keep those ears open because they don't want to be sitting there with their flashlight off. And besides, it's fun to turn a flashlight on and off. So think of that to keep them engaged in everything you do. And when you're sharing things with them, be excited, because if you're excited, they're going to be excited. If you're enjoying it, they're going to enjoy it. Another thing you can do is you can bring lightning bugs to worship. I didn't bring any lightning bugs because I didn't have any. But You know, when the season comes for lightning bugs, bring a jar of lightning bugs one night to worship and talk about how they light up a jar and how kids can light up the world for Jesus. And then give them ideas, you know, say maybe there's a, you know, especially this fall, maybe there's a little older couple that lives near them, or somebody that can't get out and rake their grass, or they can't, you know, do little things. Maybe they could take them some pretty flowers, or just do something to be lightning bugs for Jesus and to let their light shine. And then maybe you could have a section on the background also where, you know, kids like to be creative and they like to think of things to do. So maybe you could have another section on your board where you have, like, use foam board on this part, so where they can think of things at home on their own that they could do that could light the world for Jesus. And let them make a little craft or a drawing that they color or something, and invite them to bring their project and share it with the adventurers at worship. But keep in mind that some kids would love to do that, but the thought of them having to get up in front and talk would keep them from doing it. So make sure you let them know, if you want to do it, you can do all the talking. But if you're kind of shy and you'd rather just give me the picture and let me talk about it for you, I'll do that. But let them pin it on the board and be proud of it, and maybe it will encourage other kids to start thinking about things they can do to let their light shine. And my little boy, you know, like when I say about, you know, some kids are shy, in Adventure Club, he would never color the poster or try to make a poster for the Adventure Family Fun Day. And one day I said, Matthew, why do you never want to turn a poster in? And he goes, oh no, Mom, because he said, what if I win? And then they would give me a free week to camp, and I don't want to go to camp. And so I thought, you never know what's in a kid's mind. He didn't want to go to camp. He didn't want to leave his mom and dad, so he wasn't going to do a poster. So make sure you offer the kids the chance that you'll talk about their picture or their project for them. Anyhow, because kids have a lot of things that they can think about for sure. And another idea that you could do for helping them think about the theme of lighting the world for Jesus all week long, you could send a take-home with them, something that has to do with what you've talked about in worship that day. But if you do your worship first, I would give the take-homes to the class counselors and let them pass them out to the kids right when they're done with class, because otherwise they'll be fiddling with them and they won't be paying attention during their class. But there's a lot of different take-homes you could send them. Like you could send them this paper and have them have a contest, you know. Depending on whatever, any of these, you could, you know, send them home. But I'm going to show you these as we get farther along. But think of take-homes maybe that they could take home with them, and they would love that. And like some of my other ideas I had was maybe you could give them a little campfire made out of popsicle sticks with a little piece of red paper in, you know, something like that. They could put it on their dresser, and maybe it will help them think of the story, you know, all week. Maybe a little paper lantern that you can send one of these home with them, and they can decorate it. They can color it when they get home and stick it on their dressers. Or the website that I got that off of, I listed all the websites for your resources, but some of the websites you can literally go to and select the color palette and it will color the picture for you. I colored that one myself, but some of them you could do that, so you could actually have it colored and give it to them, and then they can just take it home and put it on their dresser, and then when they see that, they'll think about your worship, and hopefully it will help them make a difference in their life. A picture to color, maybe a hat, you know, something that they could take home and wear or stick on their dresser. Or maybe just a picture of a sun or a moon or a star or some creation that you've made that has something to do with that. This website right here colored all these stars in for me. I didn't have to color any of them. So that would be pretty easy, you know, thing. There's things you could do with them. You wouldn't have to just give them the paper. You could put it on a stick. You could do all kinds of whatever ideas came to your mind, you know, something to help them think about the worship theme for the week. Another thing that kids like to do, they like to do skits. They love to do skits, especially those Adventure Club age, but even Pathfinder kids age like to do skits. But you could let them maybe once a month, let them, and especially with Adventure Clubs, some of the ages, I think it's Builders and maybe Helping Hands, one of them has to do a skit for worship. So you can let that group of kids one day do their skit for your worship. And they love doing that, and the other kids love watching them. And you know, there's different things with Bible stories that you could think about, like all the things Jesus did, how much light he brought to so many people's lives, the people he healed, the blind people that he gave sight back to. Then there's Little Maid. If she hadn't witnessed for Jesus, if she hadn't shared her faith, Naaman would never have known about the true God. You know, I mean, she was taken from her home, her family, and she was young. But yet, even being a young little girl like that, she chose to remember what her parents had taught her, and she chose to let her light shine for Jesus her whole life. And it made a huge difference in Captain and Lady Naaman. And the little boy who shared his lunch, remember our little example? He made a big difference in how many people that were hungry that day? 5,000, yeah. And then there was Abraham. Abraham's story reminds me of other people in the Bible who chose to trust God and not give up. And what did God, you know, the stars, how many his descendants would be like the stars? You know, I mean, there's lots of little things you can do to help that get in their mind. And Noah didn't give up. He built the ark, even though people laughed at him because there wasn't a cloud in sight. And when the flood did come, he and his family were safe. Think about that, Noah's Ark. You know, if you talk about Noah and you have a song you can sing, have these made up. I got this off to Crafting the Word of God, and I just made a pattern and put it on foam, and yeah, just little things like that you could do. And then there's Esther. Esther didn't give up when she was taken from her home to be the wife of the king, and God used her to save his people. And for Esther, you could pass out a crown for them to take home. You know, and as for the boys, maybe you could find some kingly looking crown that they take home, and it could be from King David or something. Or as you're telling the story, let them wear the crown. If you're singing a song about it, you can get these. I got this little crown at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. Just tape it to stick, or you know, and let them use that while they're singing a song. When you're talking about God's promises, rainbows, all the promises in the Bible, all the Bible stories that have promises, have some rainbows for them to think about. And then there's the story of Joseph. Joseph didn't give up when his brothers sold him into slavery or when he was wrongly put into prison. And in time, he was promoted to second in command over all of Egypt. If you're going to talk about his character and how he lit the world and how he made a huge difference in the world, he kept how many people through the visions God gave him from starving? You can get this on Crafting the Word of God too. Put it on cardstock. But if you're going to have them wear this during your story, I would laminate them because, you know, they're fine, like to show you guys. But if you had a bunch of kids wearing them, but they would love it. They would think that was really neat, and that would make the story come more alive. Also, how about Moses? Moses didn't give up when Pharaoh repeatedly denied his request to free the Israelites, but God finally set him free. And what did God send? He sent frogs. He sent all kinds of stuff. Another thing from Crafting the Word of God, one of these. And that kids see it. Oh yeah, frogs. What were the plagues? There's all kinds of things even that you could use for plagues that are on that have many different things. And then there was Hannah. Hannah didn't give up when she couldn't have a child, and Samuel was born later to become a prophet and a leader of God's people. So look at what a light Samuel shined on everybody. Look at everything he did and became a prophet. And then there's David. David didn't give up when he saw how huge Goliath was. He was just a little shepherd boy, and he won the battle. So he was only a shepherd boy, but what did he do for God? Many, many things. This came from Crafting the Word of God as well. You could also laminate this. And this right here, this is that rubberized string. You can get a huge roll of it for, I want to say, $4. You could make thousands of these off of one, well, not thousands, but you could make hundreds off of these. Plenty for your adventure kids. David. And then what about David? Being just a shepherd boy, took care of the sheep. You know, the really younger kids, they would love this. They can be little shepherd boys for Jesus. They can stand firm no matter what comes in their life. Look what David did. You know, things that they can hold on to during worship, things that can bring them more into the worship theme. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't give up when they were thrown into the fiery furnace, and they came out without even their hair singed. That would be a good time to put the crowns in for that part of the story, or this, with a little bit of, and you can laminate any of this if you're going to use it a lot. But kids like this kind of stuff. I mean, they like having interaction. They like having things and seeing things and being able to do all of that. And then there's Daniel. And I thought this was really interesting when you think about this. Jesus living in Daniel's heart and shining out through him made him into one of the greatest statesmen the world has ever known. It was unheard of for the same person who had served as prime minister in two opposing empires to be trusted by both. And Daniel was trusted by both. He was trusted by both the Babylonians and the Medes and the Persians. No one could find any fault in Daniel's character. All of his praying gave him the strength to stand for Jesus and his influence to light the world. So Daniel, he went through quite a bit too. He went in the lion's den, but yet he let his light shine. And think of the impact he had on King Darius and on, just from letting his light shine, he never gave up. No matter what happened to him, he let his light shine. And then there was Peter, and there's Samuel, and John the Baptist, and Joshua, who brought down the walls of Jericho. And how about the boy King Josiah? What about he didn't like it that the temple was all messed up. And so what did he do? He figured out a way to get money so that he could rebuild the temple. And if you talked about that, because, he was just a boy, and it can encourage kids to see what they can do for Jesus. If he could do it, I can let my light shine. I could do something great for Jesus. Send a take home with him. Make it a contest. Say, I'm going to send this picture home with you, and I want you to bring it back, what you think the temple might have looked like after it was rebuilt. And then have a little section that you can put it. If you start running out of sections on your board, remember the idea of the command strips and the posters on the wall, because you could stick some stuff up there too. And then there was the oil, the widow's oil, who never ever ran out. You can give them little pop dots, and they can put their little cans of oil up. So just things that that will help them interact into your worship. And another thing I thought of is with this board, you can stick pins in it. My son made this in Adventure Club a long time ago. I don't even remember, maybe second grade. And what you can do, you could buy a big piece of this foam board, and you can think of something that would make them really think about lighting up the world for Jesus. Trace it onto here, and then you put these pins in it, and they don't come out. You think they might be floppy, but they're in there very sturdy. And then cut your rope, do a little practice one yourself, and cut your yarn so that the string is, the right size, and then hang that on the wall and give several of them a chance to come up, put the string. They're not going to know exactly maybe what it's going to be. Let them put the string around a couple of the things, then let them sit down, let somebody come up and have it go along with whatever the theme is of your story. Then they're interacting along, with your story, and they're actually having a part, and then have it hanging up for a while so they can be proud of the work that they did. Or something like that. You could even give them each a little tiny one, but I don't know how long your worships are. But that's just another idea that you could put on your board. Just make sure that they stay involved, because that's what they're really going to like. And make sure you do use bright colors and eye-catching decorations, because they like that. And then you think, okay, all right, I've got my backdrop. I've kind of got what decorations I'm going to use. I kind of know what worship things I'm going to talk about. But what about my music? I really want my music to tie in with everything else I've done. So what am I going to do? Well, you'd be surprised. It's a little harder to think of songs about light than you would think. But the one is Go Light Your World. And then This Little Light of Mine. You could have them all hold one of these and do like we've been doing in worship, and just This Little Light of Mine, and do Hide It Under a Bush So No, and your theme song. And then I'll Be a Sunbeam for Jesus. You could make some suns. This is a star, but you could make a sun like this and put glitter on, and give them each one of these, because you could buy these sticks in a bag. I had a bag of them, and they're very inexpensive. And they can, just as you're singing, they can be a sunshine for Jesus. And so you can do that. And then how about light in the corner where you are? That's another one that you can do. And there's probably many other ones out there that you can do. But for sure, when you're singing, let them wear the fire hats. Let them hold the campfire sticks and wave them. Let them do the lanterns. Let them interact with all of these things as they're singing, for whatever the theme is for that. And kind of think about, I might could kill two birds with one stone here, because you're going to have Adventure Club Sabbath, and you're going to have investiture, and you always end up usually having special music at those. So think about, how could I put some of this stuff into that? What could I do with my lightning bug for Jesus? Let me see. And think of that. And as you practice these songs throughout your worships, think of the ones that maybe you could do several of them. Do them in front on that Sabbath and at investiture. The people in your church will love to see the stuff that the kids do. They'll love to see all the different things that they're involved with and all the fun things that they do each week. So kind of think about that kind of stuff. And our time's kind of going. So I wanted to read you a story, because I don't know about you guys, but I really feel Jesus is coming soon, and I think we need to get our kids ready to meet him. And I think that somebody shared this story with me just recently, and I just really liked it, and it made me think of how we need to have our children ready to grab on the rope, to be ready to meet Jesus. So I just wanted to share this with you, kind of as an ending to I actually have one more book to show you, but this is kind of like a way to sort of end my thing and to give you a thought too as I'm reading this. When you're an Adventure Club director, it can be a very overwhelming job. And if you're a staff member, and sometimes you just feel like, oh my, this is so much work. Why did I say I would do this? But remember why you're doing it. You're doing it because you want to get the kids ready to meet Jesus. Some of these kids don't get worship at home. You don't know what their situations are. And you may be the Jesus that they're seeing. The person that's going to, that when they get to heaven, they'll say, thank you. If you hadn't done Adventure Club, I wouldn't be here. And so, but sometimes it can be very discouraging. So remember this story on those discouraging days. This was Ellen White's dream of the narrow way. Over 100 years ago, God gave Ellen White a dream. In the dream, she was traveling with a large group of people. Some of the people had their wagons loaded with all their things. The road they were traveling on was steep, and on one side was a big drop-off, and on the other side was a high white wall. The road got narrower and narrower, so they had to leave their wagons because there was not room enough for them. Some of the people tied their luggage on the horses and rode the horses. The path kept getting more narrow, so the people were all crowded near the wall. When their luggage hit it, they would sway toward the edge. They were afraid they would fall off the edge, so they cut the luggage from the horse and it fell to the side. When the road became so narrow that they were afraid they would lose their balance, they got off their horses. Finally, they left their horses behind and followed each other, walking in each other's footsteps. Just then, small white ropes came down the wall, and they grabbed them to keep their balance. The ropes moved as they moved. Finally, the path became so narrow that they had to take their shoes and stockings off. Even then, it was difficult to stay on the narrow and dangerous path. Many people were not used to such hard traveling and had already stopped climbing. But the people who were used to things being hard kept traveling and wanted to reach the end of the road. Because the road became so narrow, they could not walk on it. They had to hold on tight to the rope, saying, "We have to hold on from above. We have to hold on from above." Each person said these words to the next person on the path. Suddenly, the people on the path heard all kinds of noise from below the cliff. They heard bad words, bad music, loud laughing, and also loud crying. The people holding onto the rope on the wall were more determined than ever to keep going up the path. Then in her dream, now the people came to a big cliff. Wait, hold on. Okay, sorry. The rope got bigger and stronger. In the dream, Ellen saw that the white wall had blood on it. It made her sad to see the beautiful wall stained with blood. Then she realized that when people came up the path and saw the stains, that they would know that others had been there before them. And even though they suffered a lot of pain, they had kept on going up the path. This would encourage them to keep going on too. Now the people came to a big cliff below them, and the path ended. There wasn't anywhere to put their feet. They must trust the ropes, which had become very thick. Some of the people wondered where the rope came from and what was holding them. Then in her dream, Ellen White looked across to the other side from the cliff and saw a beautiful field of green grass about 6 inches high. She could not see the sun, but the bright beams of light like fine gold and silver rested on the field. It was more beautiful than anything she had ever seen on earth. But would they reach the field? What if the ropes broke? Again, the people whispered the words, "What holds the ropes?" Then someone said, "Our only hope is to trust in Jesus. The rope has held us safely all this way. It will still hold us." While they were waiting, they heard the words, "God holds the ropes. We need not fear." Then Ellen's husband, James White, swung himself over the cliff and landed in the beautiful field. Ellen then took the rope and swung across. Then the rest of the people did the same. They felt so relieved and happy and thankful. They then sang a beautiful song to God. Many times Ellen and James had hard times, but then they would remember the dream and ask God to be with them and help them. Let's remember, for all of our boys and girls and all of our parents, that we too are traveling to a beautiful place, and if, like the people in the dream, we hold on to the ropes of faith, we will be carried safely to God's heavenly home. And I just really like that story because it makes me think, yeah, it can be hard being a director. It can be hard when you hardly have time to get your own family's thing done. But remember, keep holding onto that rope because we want our kids to be holding onto that rope and be ready to meet Jesus. And you know what? I can honestly say the Lord will multiply your time because sometimes looking back, I think, how did I have time to do all that stuff? But you know what? I really think that when you're working for the Lord, I think He multiplies your time, and I think He gives you the strength and just works miracles to help you get His kids ready to meet Him. So I had one more thing I wanted to show you too. This book, I didn't have this on my outline, but so if you want to write it down, it's an Abednego book, and it's the first grade one. And it has some really, really nice pictures, and you could take a picture of this too if you want to. But it has some really nice pictures in it that go along with some of the themes we talked about. Like, for instance, the Noah one, you know, where they could color the rainbow and do some coloring. You know, you could copy it and pass that out. Also, it has about Joseph, you know, character building Joseph. It has Jesus, how Jesus, even though he was only 12, he wasn't afraid to share his light. He wasn't afraid to talk to the priest and to say what he believed. He wasn't afraid to share Jesus, not a bit. And then we have, I love this poem, Tell Me the Story of Jesus. Tell me the story of Jesus. I love to hear things I would ask him to tell me if he were here. Scenes by the wayside, tales by the sea, stories of Jesus, tell them to me. And that's our whole goal with our adventure, is to tell them the story of Jesus and make sure that they know the story of Jesus and that they love Jesus and that he's actually their best friend. Because you don't know if some of these kids are getting the love at home that maybe other kids are. They need to know that Jesus loves them. And then the boy who gave his lunch to Jesus. You could really have a fun day with that one. You could have the picture, you could have the basket, you could have the story. You know, there's all, this book is full of tons of nice stuff. But anyhow, that's the Abednego. And then don't forget the other websites on there, Crafting the Word of God, for many other things besides, you know, there's many other things on there besides just lighting the world. You know, there's things you can use for all kinds of your stories. But this is just kind of or just your crafts for the kids and Adventure Club, because these are very inexpensive. And if you don't have a big budget, all you got to do is print them off at the church, and then the kids can cut them out. And if some things are kind of hard for kids to cut, keep in mind that there's elderly people in your church, and some of them are lonely and wish they had something to do. They may be more than happy to sit and cut out things like that for your kids. So does anybody have any questions about anything? Yes.
Because we share the room with the youth
Mm-hmm.
every week, I don't want to leave the decoration up. How do you go about not having to take it down every time you have a meeting and put it back next week again?
Yeah.
The whole year, that's a challenging part. I don't want to overdo it.
I would keep it simple, and maybe you could get a plastic tote, and just whatever you're going to decorate with, just make sure it's going to fit in your plastic tote and it's not too cumbersome to take it down and set it up. Because if you did, if you could leave your command strips up, you could just do the poster idea or the foam board ideas, and then you would just have to stick them in a closet and hang them up every week. But even if you were able to use a closet to store, something like that, maybe you could put some kind of hangers or stick these on that you could stick some of your decorations on, something like that. But I guess if you have to take something down every week, you'll want to keep that in mind when you're making your decision on how elaborate you want to get.
How do you implement this thing throughout the year? It's just like before, during group meetings?
For your worship, before you start, we always brought all the kids together, and our youth pastor would bring his guitar, and the kids would sing, and that's when you could implement all the songs about the light. And then the short worship talk would be implementing how they can share their light. And it isn't a long worship. I want to say for song service and the worship, maybe 10 minutes. But you can do a lot in 10 minutes, And but just something that really gets to it, because like I said, some of these kids, they may not be getting anything except this. So
That would be like worship, and then they would go to the
yeah, what we did is we would have the worship about 10, maybe sometimes it would go to 15 minutes. And then we have them line up in a U. We would have flags for each of the units, and the kids in those units would line up between their flags. And then we would do the pledge and the law, and they would hold the little signs that had the pledge and law on. And then we would have them sit down right where they were and pass out their awards from the week, the weeks before and stuff. We would give them their awards as they earned them, because they're young and they wanted to get them on their sashes. So all that together maybe would take 20 minutes. And then after that, we would say, okay, eager beavers, you leave, follow your counselors to your room. Don't just have a mass exodus or they'll run all over each other and you'll have all kinds of injuries. And then we'd say, okay, busy bees, follow your leader. And then finally it would be helping hands. So it's, they exit the room in an orderly fashion, and then they each go to their own area, and then they have at least an hour, because we did it from 6 to 7:30. So, we'd have announcements. We almost always had them in their room by, say, 20 after 6, because we wanted to give the counselors, a little over an hour each week. And so that's how we always did it, and it worked out nice. So you could do, with your theme, if you have an hour and a half for your meeting, you could spend 15 minutes on that, and then 5 minutes on your pledges, and then send them to their rooms. They'd still have an hour and 10 minutes.